Have you ever looked into your son's eyes and not recognized the person you raised? Ever felt like a guest? Or worse, a servant? In the very home you bled and sweat to build? They thought I was 58, widowed, and washed up. They thought I was a shadow, a bottomless bank account. They forgot one thing. Even the quietest people have their limits. And I just found mine. That afternoon, when I put my key in the lock, I wasn't coming home. I was walking into a war. My name is Ilara, and for the past year, I've been living as a ghost in my own life. At 58, a retired university archivist, I rattling around this paid-off craftsman bungalow in Cedar Falls. The quiet in this house is a physical thing. A heavy blanket that smells like Marcus's old flannel shirts still hanging in the closet. He's been gone 14 months, but the silence he left is painfully loud. Every floorboard creak, every sigh of the furnace, is a reminder that I am alone. The house is a catalogue of his absence. His coffee mug is still by the sink. His reading glasses are still on the nightstand. I haven't had the strength to move them. I had convinced myself this quiet, this grief, was all that was left for me. Then the phone rang. It was Liam. His voice was high, frantic, a pitch I hadn't heard since he was a teenager who'd crashed his first car. Mum, you have to help us. We've been evicted. They locked us out. We have nowhere to go. Evicted. The word sounded foreign, violent. Liam and his wife, Jocelyn, lived in a high-end loft in Portland, a place I'd only seen in her lifestyle blog photos. It was all glass walls and exposed brick. A life funded by Liam's tech startup. He was always on the verge of a breakthrough, always about to secure the next round of funding. They showed up 3 hours later, not in a beat-up U-Haul, but in a gleaming luxury SUV. Designer suitcases were piled by my front door. Jocelyn, despite the trauma of being homeless, looked flawless, her face a perfect mask of bewildered victimhood. Liam just looked tired and angry, avoiding my eyes. The funding just dried up. Mum, he mumbled, hauling a monogrammed duffel bag into the guest room. Just like that. One day we're fine, the next, gone. They seized everything. My heart ached for him, my son, my only child, cast out. The loneliness that had been my constant companion suddenly felt unbearable. The thought of this empty house having life in it again, even under these circumstances, was a relief I was ashamed to admit. Of course, I welcomed them. I was a mother. It's what I do. The first few days were almost nice. I cooked. Real meals. Not just the toast and tea I'd been living on. Jocelyn, who I'd always found a bit cold, was effusive. Ilara, this is amazing. You have to teach me to make this pot roast. She bustled around my kitchen, her energy filling the void. She said, building her brand from home. Then the rearranging began. It was subtle. A suggestion here, a freshening up there. The framed photo of Marcus and me on our 25th anniversary was moved from the mantel to a side table. It just feels a bit somber in here, don't you think? She'd said, replacing it with a minimalist white vase. Then my favourite worn Persian rug in the living room, the one Marcus and I bought in that little shop in Astoria, was rolled up and put in the basement. It was a tripping hazard. Ilara, I found this gorgeous, modern one online that will just brighten the whole space. I let it happen. I told myself it was compromise. I told myself it was kind to let them make this house feel like their home, too. About a week in. I was gathering their laundry. Liam had tossed his blazer onto the floor of the spare room, the one that used to be Marcus's study. As I picked it up, a crumpled piece of paper fell out of the pocket. I almost threw it away, but my archivist instincts took over. I smoothed it out. It wasn't an eviction notice. It was a final denial letter for a personal loan from a high-interest lender. I scanned the lines, my blood turning cold. The reason for denial wasn't a lack of funding at his startup. It was unstable credit history and multiple recent defaults. They hadn't been kicked out. They had scammed and spent their way to the end of the line. They weren't victims. They were just failures. I folded the letter, my hands trembling slightly, and put it back in his pocket. I took their laundry to the machine, the smell of Jocelyn's expensive perfume rising from her silk blouses. And I said nothing. 2 months dissolved. The house was no longer just quiet. It was occupied. The silence of grief had been replaced by the soundtrack of their lives. From Marcus's old study, which was now Liam's office, I heard the constant rapid-fire clicks and muttered curses of his video games. He was networking, he claimed, making vital connections in the tech space. He was usually still in his bathrobe when I went to bed. Jocelyn's brand building was equally demanding. It required her to spend hours in my rose garden, which Marcus had meticulously cultivated, posing for selfies. She'd artfully arrange a cup of my tea and a book she never opened on the wrought iron table. "It's all about the aesthetic. Ilara," she'd explain, her voice bright and hollow. "People need to see an authentic, curated life." My life, meanwhile, had become a routine of service. I cooked. I cleaned. I faded. The letter I'd found in Liam's pocket remained a cold stone in my stomach, a secret I didn't have the courage to confront. One Tuesday afternoon, Jocelyn found me in the kitchen, wiping down counters. She approached me with that manufactured warmth, the kind that always set my teeth on edge. "Ilara," she said, leaning against the counter, as if we were equals, as if we were friends. "Liam and I were talking, and we are just so worried about you." I paused, cloth in hand. Worried about what? "You just have so much on your plate, grieving, running this big house, all these financials." She waved her hand vaguely, as if financials were a swarm of annoying gnats. "You're from a generation that isn't used to all this online banking and automatic payments. It's so easy to miss something. You're just not used to this stuff. I've managed my own bills for 30 years. Jocelyn, I think I know how." "Of course you do. Of course," she said, her smile never wavering. "But you shouldn't have to. We're here now. Liam and I want to help. We have a wonderful idea." She laid out the plan. It was so simple, so logical. "Just to simplify," she kept saying. The phrase was like a smooth, polished stone. "We should have one joint account for the household. We'll pool everything. Our savings, your pension, your social security. And from that one account, I'll handle everything. The mortgage is paid. Bless you for that. But there's utilities, the internet, groceries, property taxes. It'll be so much easier for you. No more stress." I hesitated. A deep, instinctual alarm bell was ringing faintly in the back of my mind. My money. Marcus and I had saved that money. It was my pension. "I don't know, Jocelyn. It seems complicated. My accounts are already set up." That's when Liam must have overheard. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his gaming headset still draped around his neck. He had mastered the art of looking perpetually disappointed in me. "Mom," he said, his voice heavy with manufactured hurt. "You don't trust me. Is that it?" "No. Liam, it's not that. It's just, we are trying to take care of you," he cut in, his voice rising just enough to sound wounded. "We are living under your roof, trying to contribute, trying to pull our weight by managing the stress for you. And you're acting like we're, I don't know, strangers. We're family. Mum. Or did you forget that?" I looked at my son, whose frantic phone call had torn my quiet life apart. I saw the desperation he was trying to hide, and the old maternal guilt, the fear of being the unhelpful, difficult old woman, washed over me. I was just so tired. Tired of the tension. Tired of the quiet. Tired of fighting. "Okay," I said, the word barely a whisper. "If you think it's best, just to simplify." Jocelyn beamed. "You won't regret this, Ilara. It's the smart move." The next day, they drove me to my bank, the one I'd used for 30 years. Jocelyn did all the talking. She sat beside me, her hand resting lovingly on my shoulder, a gesture of supportive, daughterly affection for the bank manager to see. She explained the situation. Her mother-in-law was getting older, a bit forgetful, and they were all moving their finances together to make life easier. The manager nodded, charmed by her efficiency. They handed me the papers. I looked at the signature line. I was adding Liam and Jocelyn as full co-owners to my checking account, my savings, the account my pension and my social security check deposited into. I felt a small, sharp pain in my chest. But Liam was smiling at me. A rare, genuine-looking smile. I signed my name. As we walked out into the bright afternoon sunlight, Jocelyn squeezed my arm. "See, all done? So much simpler. Now, I'm just going to pop over and grab some groceries for dinner. You two head to the car." Liam grunted and started walking. I watched Jocelyn head toward the supermarket, but she didn't go in. I stood by the car door, watching her reflection in the bank's window. She walked right past the grocery store and, with a quick glance over her shoulder, slipped into the high-end boutique next door. The one that sold leather handbags for hundreds of dollars? I got in the car. Liam was already tapping at his phone, the engine running. The simplification began immediately, and it was anything but simple. My quiet, frugal home was suddenly inundated with deliveries. Cardboard boxes from subscription services I had never heard of piled up on the porch, all addressed to Jocelyn. Boxes for makeup. Boxes for curated outfits. Boxes containing artisanal cheeses. Cases of expensive wine, the kind Marcus and I would have considered a major extravagance, were delivered weekly. The family budget, it seemed, was robust. Dinner was no longer the simple, shared meals I had briefly enjoyed. It was now often expensive, lukewarm food from delivery apps. "Ilara, would you mind heating this up?" Jocelyn would call from the sofa, where she and Liam were watching a movie on their new, enormous television, one that had appeared while I was at the grocery store. "We're starving, and the driver took forever." My role in the house shifted. I was no longer the matriarch, not even a mother. I was the help. The transition was so subtle I barely noticed it until I was doing things I had never done. I was the one who scrubbed the bathroom after them, the one who took out the recycling overflowing with their wine bottles. The lowest point came one afternoon when Jocelyn breezed into the laundry room, holding a small mesh bag. "Ilara, Would you be a dear and hand wash these? She asked, dangling the bag of her expensive lace lingerie. She gave a little laugh. The machine is just so harsh on delicates, and honestly, you get them so much cleaner than I ever do. I just stood there, my hands still warm from folding Liam's towels, and I took the bag from her. I washed her underwear. Liam was worse. He simply did not see me. I became heir to him. I would be in the kitchen, and he would walk in, open the refrigerator, and walk out without a word of acknowledgement. The only time he spoke directly to me was to issue a request. "Mom, have you seen my keys? Mom, we're out of that coffee I like." The son I had rocked to sleep, the boy whose skinned knees I had bandaged, looked through me as if I were glass. The damp chill of the Oregon fall settled in, and my arthritis began to throb in my hands and knees. I was running low on my joint supplements. I found Jocelyn at the kitchen table, which was now her command center, her laptop open. "Jocelyn," I began, hating the tentative sound of my own voice. "I need to order my supplements. They're usually about $50. She sighed, a long, theatrical breath of the overburdened. She tapped a few keys. "Oh, Ilara, this month is just a little tight," she said, her voice full of synthetic pity. "We had some unexpected expenses with the car. Can you try to hold off for a week or two? Maybe just take half doses." I looked at the counter, where a bottle of wine that I knew cost at least $200 sat waiting for their dinner. I said nothing. "Of course," I murmured. "I can wait." I began to make myself smaller. At dinner, when I did cook, I served them the largest portions, the best cuts of meat. I would tell them I was not very hungry, that I had eaten earlier, and would eat the leftover rice and vegetables in the kitchen while they laughed in the other room. My isolation became complete. My few remaining friends, mostly other widows from my old library group, would call the landline. Jocelyn always answered it now. "Oh, hi, Martha," I heard her say one afternoon, her voice thick with false concern. "Ilara's just resting right now. She's been so tired lately. Poor thing. I'll be sure to tell her you called." She never did. She was systematically erasing me. The final illusion of my life shattered one rainy Tuesday. I was in the kitchen, listening to Jocelyn on the phone with one of her friends, her voice low and giggling. I thought she was in her room. "I'm telling you, it's a perfect setup," Jocelyn whispered, and I froze. The old woman is totally clueless. She's so lonely. She's just grateful for the company. She just signs whatever we put in front of her. My blood ran cold. The floor felt unsteady beneath my feet. It was not a suspicion. It was a fact. A few days later, I tried to buy a new paperback online, a small $5 treat for myself, using my own old credit card, one I had kept separate and paid off myself. The screen flashed red. Transaction declined. Impossible. I tried again. Declined. A cold, sharp fear I hadn't felt before cut through the fog of my depression. I went to Marcus's old study, to the desktop computer they never used. My hands trembled as I logged into my credit monitoring service, something I had not done in years. My score, always a point of pride, had plummeted. I scrolled down the page, my heart hammering against my ribs, and then I saw it. A new line of credit, an auto loan, opened 6 weeks ago, in my name. The amount was $60,000. I looked out the window of the study. In my driveway sat the gleaming, black luxury SUV that Liam and Jocelyn had arrived in, the one they used for their wine-tasting trips and dinners in Portland. They hadn't just stolen my pension, they had stolen my identity. They had bought a car I had never seen, never touched, and never approved. The stress was no longer just mental. It had become physical. It settled in my chest, a dull, persistent ache that sometimes sharpened when I was trying to sleep. I started skipping my arthritis half-doses altogether, and the pain in my hands was a constant, throbbing reminder of my weakness. One morning, after carrying a heavy load of their laundry up from the basement, the chest pain flared, radiating down my left arm. It was a terrifying echo of what Marcus had experienced. I knew I had to see a doctor. I told them at breakfast, my voice small. I need to go to the clinic. My chest hurts. Jocelyn didn't look up from her phone. Today I need the car. Ilara, I have a content meeting in Portland. A content meeting was her term for having lunch with another blogger. Liam let out a heavy sigh, the sound of a man deeply put upon. Fine, I'll take you. But you have to be quick. I have calls at 1. He drove me. He drove is a generous term. He piloted the $60,000 SUV, the one my credit had paid for, with angry, jerky movements. The trip to the clinic, usually 10 minutes, felt like an hour. We sat in a strained, heavy silence. The only sound was the click of his fingernails tapping on his phone screen. He didn't ask me how I was feeling. He didn't ask what was wrong. I was just cargo that was making him late. At the clinic, Dr. Evans was gentle, but her brow was furrowed. My blood pressure was shockingly high. Ilara, what is going on? She asked, her kind eyes searching mine. Your numbers were perfect 6 months ago. The stress you're under, it's dangerous. She ordered an EKG and some blood work. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to pour out the whole sordid story, but I just nodded and said, I'll try to relax more. The EKG was normal, thank God, but she wanted to see me back in a week. I went to the front desk to pay my copay, a simple $50 charge. I handed the receptionist the joint debit card Jocelyn had given me, the one linked to my accounts. The young woman swiped it. She frowned. She swiped it again. Then she looked up, her voice clear and carrying in the quiet waiting room. I'm sorry, Ma'am. This card is declined. My face burned. I could feel the eyes of the other people in the waiting room on me. Oh, that's strange, I stammered. Could you try it again? Please. She did, with an impatient tap of her foot. Nope. Insufficient funds. Insufficient funds. My own voice was a stranger's. My entire pension, my social security, had been deposited just last week. Liam, who had been scrolling on his phone by the door, let out an explosive sigh of pure irritation. Seriously, Mom, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Couldn't you have waited until tomorrow? The pension isn't even in yet. He was lying. I knew it was. The shame was so total, so paralyzing. I felt like I might faint. The receptionist was staring at me, her expression a mix of pity and impatience. We need to collect payment, ma'am. My hands trembled as I fumbled in my purse, in the small, hidden, zippered pocket where I kept an old, folded $50 bill. Emergency money. Marcus had always called it. I hadn't touched it since his funeral. I unfolded the bill and slid it across the counter. The ride home was worse. The silence was now a weapon, thick with Liam's resentment. He was angry at me. As we pulled into the driveway, he finally spoke. His voice was cold, flat, and full of contempt. You really need to manage your spending better. Mom, you're bankrupting us. You're bankrupting us. The words hit me not like a slap, but like a bucket of ice water. The humiliation, the fear, the pain in my chest, it all vanished, replaced by a sudden, glacial clarity. The fog I had been living in for months evaporated. It wasn't just sadness or weakness that had let this happen. It was my own willful denial. I got out of the car. I walked into the house. My house. I didn't stop in the kitchen. I didn't go to my room. I walked straight down the hall to Marcus's old study, the room where Liam played his games. He followed me, already complaining. What's for lunch? I'm starving. And you made me. His voice trailed off as I walked over to his laptop, the one he'd left open on the desk. He never bothered to lock it. He had nothing to fear from me. Mum, what are you doing? I sat down in Marcus's old leather chair. I put my hands on the keyboard. I was not just a grieving widow. I was not just a foolish old woman. I was an archivist. My entire life had been dedicated to finding the truth buried in the details. I'm managing my spending. Liam, I said, my voice calm and even. I clicked open his browser. I wasn't just looking anymore. I was investigating. Liam sputtered, still standing in the doorway. Mum, what do you think you're doing? That's my private computer. It's in my house, on my electricity, and it's connected to my internet, which I am apparently paying for. I said. My voice did not shake. The woman who had fumbled for a $50 bill in the clinic was gone. In her place was the archivist, the woman who had spent 30 years organizing chaos into truth. I need to make calls, he insisted, his voice whining. Then go use your phone. I turned back to the screen. He huffed, a theatrical, childish sound, and I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. I was alone. The browser was already open to our joint bank account. The login was saved. He was careless. He was arrogant. I clicked. It was not a checking account. It was a crime scene. The humiliation from the clinic was nothing compared to the cold, analytical rage that now filled me. My monthly income, my pension, and my Social Security totaled nearly $4,500. It was deposited like clockwork on the 1st of every month. Today was the 28th. The available balance was $31.40. I clicked on the transaction history. It was a digital feeding frenzy. The deposit hit on the 1st. By the 3rd, 48 hours later, the entire sum was gone. It was a blur of transfers and withdrawals, thousands of dollars, split into smaller, repeating payments, to sites with names like Global Aces and River King Casino, online gambling. My son was gambling away my retirement. Then I saw the other charges, the recurring payments, a monthly charge for a storage unit in Portland, a payment to a high-interest lender, the same one from the letter I had found. And there, a massive payment, the largest one, the auto loan for the $60,000 luxury SUV. My son's voice echoed in my head, sharp and cruel. You're bankrupting us. I minimized the bank window. He hadn't even bothered to close his other tabs. My eyes scanned the top of the browser. I had expected to see job sites, LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster. There was not a single one. Instead, the tabs were open to legal forums and financial advice websites. The titles made my blood run cold. How to apply for a reverse mortgage without parents' knowledge. Filing for HELOC on a jointly inherited property. Can I assume the mortgage on my mother's paid-off house? He was not just draining my monthly income. He was actively, methodically researching how to steal the last thing I had, my home. The home Marcus and I had built. I kept digging. This was his computer. But Jocelyn's influence was everywhere. Her brand was bookmarked. I clicked the link. It led to an online boutique, a sleek, minimalist site called The Cedar Closet. It was full of luxury goods, handbags, silk scarves, expensive jewelry, all curated by Jocelyn. I recognized a familiar leather tote. I went back to the bank statement. There it was, a $3,000 charge to a designer wholesale site. She was not just a blogger. She was running an online retail business, using my pension as her startup capital, selling the goods for a profit that went into an account I could not see. I had seen enough. I was about to close the laptop, to erase my history, when I saw a single folder on the desktop. It was labeled Household. An archivist knows that the most damning information is often hidden behind the most boring label. I clicked it. It contained scans, not receipts, not utility bills, insurance documents. My heart, which had been beating with a cold, steady rhythm, gave a painful lurch. I opened the first file. It was my life insurance policy. The one Marcus and I had taken out 30 years ago. It was a modest policy, just enough to cover expenses. But there was a second file, dated 6 months ago, just after they moved in. It was a new policy, a new, very large life insurance policy, taken out in my name, and the beneficiary, added as a dependent son, was Liam. I looked at the signature on the digital application. It was a crude, shaky forgery of my name. I stared at it. I went back to the bank statements one last time and searched for the name of this new insurance company. And there it was. Monthly premiums, paid from my account. They were not just stealing from me. They were not just planning to steal my house. They had increased my life insurance policy. They were paying for it with my own money. They were placing a bet. Jocelyn's giggling voice from the phone call came back to me. A perfect setup. My chest pains, my high blood pressure. Dr. Evans's worried face. They were not just waiting for me to die. They were gambling on it. I sat in the dark of Marcus's study for a long time, the forged signature on the insurance policy burning on the screen. The woman who had been embarrassed at the clinic, the woman who had washed her daughter-in-law's lingerie, felt a flicker of something she had not felt in over a year. It was not fear. It was not grief. It was a cold, pure, and profound rage. It was an engine turning over. I did not panic. I did not run downstairs to confront them. What would be the point? They would lie. They would gaslight me. They would call me confused, old, and senile. They had shown me who they were. I finally believed them. An archivist, did what I was trained to do. I organized the evidence in my mind. Then, I erased the trail. I went through Liam's browser history and meticulously deleted every trace of my investigation. The bank login, the reverse mortgage forums, the insurance policy searches, the credit report. I wiped my presence from his machine. I turned off the laptop, closed the lid, and left the room. The next morning, I was in the kitchen when Jocelyn drifted in, wrapped in a silk robe, her eyes puffy from sleep. "Ilara, we're almost out of the French roast coffee and the almond milk," she said. opening the refrigerator as if to confirm my failure. "I will be out for most of the day," I said, my voice perfectly level. I was pouring myself a cup of the cheap instant coffee I had hidden in the back of the pantry. She looked up, annoyed. "What? Why, it's Tuesday? You don't have anywhere to go?" "I am rejoining my old book club," I said. "We're meeting for lunch." Jocelyn actually laughed. "That thing I thought you said it was just a bunch of sad widows talking about their dead husbands." "Yes," I said, sipping my coffee. "It's time I reconnected with them." She shrugged, already turning her attention back to her phone. "Fine. Whatever. Just make sure you're back in time to start dinner. Liam wants that roast you make." I walked out of the kitchen, grabbed my old cloth coat, and left the house. I did not go to the library. I walked 12 blocks to the city transit center. I did not get on the bus that ran downtown. I boarded the number 17, the one that went 20 miles in the opposite direction, to the neighboring town of Gresham. I did not go to my local bank branch, the one where the manager knew me, the one where Jocelyn had placed her loving hand on my shoulder. I walked into the largest, most impersonal branch of the bank I could find. It was a cavern of marble and glass, and no one knew my face. I asked to speak to a branch manager about a fraud concern. I was led to a small, private office. A young man, his suit sharp and his eyes intelligent, stood to shake my hand. His nameplate read, Amani. He gestured for me to sit. "Mrs. Davies, how can I help you today?" I did not cry. I did not stammer. I looked him directly in the eye. "My name is Alara. I am here because I am a victim of elder financial abuse, and it is being perpetrated by my son, Liam, and his wife, Jocelyn. I need to sever all financial ties, and I need to do it today." His polite, professional smile dissolved. He became focused. "Those are extremely serious allegations. Can you provide any specifics?" "I am an archivist by trade, Mr. Amani. I document. I do not have access to a printer, but I do have this." I reached into my purse and pulled out my old, scarred flip phone, the one Liam and Jocelyn always joked about. I had spent an hour last night, in the dark, taking photographs of Liam's laptop screen. I handed him the phone. "You will find photographs of my joint account, showing my entire pension of nearly $4,500 disappearing within 48 hours of deposit. You will find photographs of his browser history, researching how to take out a reverse mortgage on my paid-off home. And you will find photographs of the auto loan I am currently paying for." He took the phone. For 10 minutes, he was silent, scrolling, his brow furrowed, his lips pressed into a thin, angry line. He finally looked up. "I see," he said. "They are systematically draining you and leveraging your identity. We can handle this. I need to open a new account. A private one," I said. "And I need my Social Security and my pension redirected to it, starting with the deposit due in 2 days. "Standard procedure," he said, already turning to his computer. "But I need something else," I said. He stopped. "I want the joint account to remain open, but only until the redirect is confirmed. Then I want it frozen. Not closed. Frozen. Pending a full investigation. They will be expecting that money. I want the door to slam in their faces." Amani looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something that was not pity. It was respect. "That can be arranged. They will be locked out completely. One last thing. The $60,000 auto loan for the SUV they are driving. I did not sign that paperwork. My signature was forged. Amani's face went hard. That is a felony. Ilara. I know, I said. And I want to file a formal fraud affidavit against both of them, right now. For the first time in months, I signed my name to a document that I had actually read, and my hand did not shake. The next morning was the 30th of the month, the day before the deposit. The air in the house was thick with anticipation, but not mine. Theirs. They were waiting for their payday, the first of the month. I'm going to be out all day, I announced at breakfast. I did not look at them. Jocelyn, surprisingly, smiled. Oh, your book club again. No, I said, pulling on my coat. I'm going to the cemetery, to visit Marcus. This was a lie they could understand. It was the kind of sentimental, mopey thing the old Ilara would do. It also meant I would be gone for hours, leaving them free to plan their spending. Oh, Jocelyn said, her sympathy as fake as her eyelashes. Well, take your time. I did not go to the cemetery. I took the bus to Gresham. I walked into the marble lobby of the bank, and Amani was waiting for me. He didn't make me wait. He treated me like a client, not a charity case. Everything is ready. Ilara, he said in his quiet office. We have the new account open. We just need your final signatures to authorize the federal deposit switch. It will take effect with the next payment. Which is tomorrow, I said. Exactly. The funds will appear in your new account by morning. I signed the papers. My hand was as steady as a surgeon's. Next, he said. Your new mailing address. We cannot send any correspondence to your home. I thought of that. I handed him a slip of paper. I opened a post office box this morning, right near the transit centre. He nodded, impressed. Good. You're thorough. He reached into his desk and pulled out a small, stiff envelope. He slid it across the desk. Inside was a single, temporary debit card. It was flat silver, with no name, just a number. This will be active in 1 hour, he said. It's good for 48 hours. Your permanent card will be mailed to your new P.O. box today. I looked at the silver card. It felt heavier than my house keys. It was my escape hatch. There is one last thing, I said. He guided me to the main teller line. I stepped up to the window. I slid the teller my old debit card, the joint account card. I need to make a cash withdrawal, I said. The teller nodded. How much today? $5,000. She paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. That's a large sum, ma'am. It's for prepaid funeral expenses, I said, my voice resonating with a lifetime of stored-up calm. I'm finalizing my arrangements. The teller's suspicious look softened into pity. Of course. I understand. She turned to her computer. I knew this was the last of the emergency savings Marcus and I had hidden in a linked account, a rainy day fund they hadn't yet discovered. She processed the transaction. The machine whirred. She counted out the money, bundled in paper bands. I took the thick envelope. I did not put it in my purse. I walked 3 feet to the next available teller. I'd like to make a cash deposit, I said. I slid her the envelope and my new, silver, nameless card. The joint account now held $31.40. My new account held $5,000. Amani walked me to the door. The trap is set. Ilara. When they try to access the pension tomorrow, The account will be frozen. I walked out into the cold, clear air. I felt light. The ache in my chest was gone. I walked past the bus stop. I did not want to sit and wait. I stuck my hand out and hailed a taxi. I had not taken a taxi in nearly 10 years. As the car pulled away from the curb, I settled into the back seat. A feeling washing over me that was so foreign I almost didn't recognize it. It was power. I was not a victim. I was a strategist. What I did not know, what I could not know, was that at that exact moment, 20 miles away in my house, Jocelyn was on her laptop. She was celebrating her upcoming windfall. She had found a $2,000 handbag online. She typed in the joint account debit card number and clicked Purchase. And for the second time that week, the screen flashed red. Transaction declined. She slammed the laptop shut, furious, blaming the bank, blaming a system glitch. She had no idea. She had no idea that her ATM, her perfect setup, had just been unplugged. The next 2 days were a masterclass in psychological theatre. It was the 31st of the month. The day before my pension and Social Security were scheduled to arrive. The house was a pressure cooker, and I was the only one who knew the valve was shut. Every sound was magnified. The click of Jocelyn's heels on the hardwood floor sounded like gunshots. The heavy, frustrated sighs from Liam's study were a constant, rumbling thunder. They were planning a trip. They had been talking about it all week, a much-needed weekend getaway to a winery in the valley. They spoke about it loudly, in front of me, as if to remind me that my money was already spent. But the system glitch, as Jocelyn called it, was still happening. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, slamming the refrigerator door. She had been trying to order groceries online. Declined. The entire banking system must be down. "Try my card," Liam called from the study. "I did. Yours is declined too," she shouted back. "We're almost out of wine." I just sat at the kitchen table, calmly nursing a cup of tea. I was an observer in my own home, watching the predators pace their cage. They were becoming irritable, snapping at each other. The manufactured affection they usually performed for my benefit was gone, replaced by the raw, ugly tension of two addicts about to miss their fix. That evening, Jocelyn marched into the kitchen. Her face was a tight mask of fury. She slapped her phone down on the table. "Ilara," she said, her voice sharp. "You need to call the bank. Right now. My card isn't working. Nothing is working. They've probably flagged the account for fraud because of that stupid withdrawal you made." I looked up, arranging my features into a mask of mild, elderly confusion. "Oh," I said, my voice airy. "Declined. That's so strange. I just don't understand all that digital stuff. Maybe it's a solar flare. I read an article that said they can disrupt satellites." Liam appeared in the doorway, drawn by the confrontation. "Don't be ridiculous." "Mom?" he snapped. "It's not a solar flare. It's a security hold. You made a large, weird withdrawal. You have to call them and verify your identity. You're the primary account holder. They'll only talk to you." He was practically vibrating with anxiety. He needed that money. His online casinos were waiting. "Just call them and fix it," he demanded. I looked from his angry, desperate face to Jocelyn's. She looked like she wanted to physically shake me. I let the silence stretch, just for a second. Then I let out a long, slow sigh. I pressed my hand to my chest, a gesture of pure, fabricated exhaustion. "Oh, goodness," I said, my voice becoming frail. "I am just so tired." That trip to the bank took so much out of me, and my chest is feeling tight again. Their expressions changed instantly. Irritation warred with a flicker of panic, not for my health, but for the possibility of their key witness becoming unavailable. My goodness, I just need to lie down, I said, pushing myself up slowly from the chair. I think I'll go to bed early. I'm sure it will all be sorted out in the morning. But Mom, Liam protested, it will only take 5 minutes. We need to… I'm sorry, dear. I'm just too tired. I shuffled past them, a picture of the frail old woman they believed me to be. I went to my bedroom, and I locked the door. I left them in the living room, surrounded by their expensive, useless gadgets, to marinate in their growing panic. I sat in my bed, reading a book I had checked out from the library. I heard their low, furious, whispered argument from the other room. An hour later, I got up. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. As I walked down the hall, I passed the study. Liam was in the living room with Jocelyn. His laptop was on the desk, open, the screen glowing. It was their only lifeline to the account, their only way to see the balance. I went into the kitchen and poured a large glass of water. I carried it back down the hall. As I passed the study doorway, I stumbled. My hand slipped. The entire glass of cold water arced through the air and landed with a sickening, sizzling splash directly onto the keyboard of Liam's open laptop. The screen went black instantly. I gasped, a hand to my mouth. Oh dear, oh my goodness, how clumsy of me. Liam roared from the living room. What was that? What did you do? He and Jocelyn ran into the study. They stared at the drowned machine, water pooling on the desk and dripping onto the floor. I tripped, I said, my voice trembling. My hand. My arthritis. I am so sorry. Liam. Is it broken? Liam stared at the laptop, his face a horrifying shade of pale. Jocelyn just looked at me, her eyes wide. But this time, the look in them was not pity or contempt. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. They were blind. They had no way to check the account. They were completely, utterly blind. And the first of the month was just hours away. I woke before the sun. The clock on my nightstand read 5 a.m. It was the first of the month. The house was silent, heavy with the stale air of their anxiety and the faint, acrid smell of the burnt laptop. I reached for my old flip phone. I did not need their high-speed internet. I called the automated bank line, a system I had used for 20 years. I entered my new account number and the temporary PIN. I listened to the robotic voice. Your current available balance is $9,500. The deposit had cleared. My $4,500, plus the $5,000 I had withdrawn. It was safe. It was mine. I went to the kitchen in the dark, using only the small bulb over the stove. I felt no panic, no fear, just a quiet, cold resolve. I took a single egg from a carton, one I had bought myself with my emergency $50 and hidden in the back of the vegetable crisper. I boiled it. I made one slice of toast. I sat at the kitchen table and ate my breakfast, savouring the silence. The storm was coming, but I was in the eye. After I finished, I washed my plate, my cup, and my small saucepan. I dried them and put them away. I took a small piece of paper from a notepad and a pen. I wrote, "At the library. We'll be back late." I left the note on the kitchen table, right where they would see it. I put on my coat, grabbed my purse, and left the house. I was gone before 7 a.m. I can only imagine the scene. Liam would have woken up around 10, grumpy and hungover, shouting for coffee I was not there to make. He would have found the note. He would have scoffed. Stupid book club, he'd probably mumble. He and Jocelyn, desperate for their winery trip, desperate for their fix, would have grabbed the keys to the $60,000 SUV. Their only remaining option was the ATM, their lifeline. I imagine them at the drive-through of our local branch. Liam inserting the joint debit card. He would have entered the PIN. He would have selected withdrawal, likely the maximum. And he would have seen the message, account, frozen. Please contact bank. He would have cursed, hit the screen. He would have tried again. Account, frozen. I imagine him speeding back to the house, frantic, the panic, the confusion. She must have done something, the old woman. But she's at the library. She's too stupid to do this. The card is frozen, Jocelyn frozen. They still believed they were in control. They still believed I was just a confused old woman who had accidentally triggered a fraud alert by taking out that $5,000. Their only option was to go inside, to charm the bank manager, to fix my mistake. They would have parked my SUV, and stormed into the lobby, ready to perform their roles as the concerned, helpful children managing their poor, aging mother's finances. But Amani was thorough. As they approached the teller line, a security guard would have stepped in front of them, a large man, polite but firm. "Can I help you?" "We need to speak to someone about my mother's account," Liam would say, full of bluster. "It's Alara Davies. The account is frozen." "Mr. Liam Davies and Mrs. Jocelyn Davies," the guard would ask, reading from a note. "Yes," Jocelyn would say, impatient. "We need this fixed, now. We have plans. Please wait here." The guard would speak into his shoulder mic. A manager would appear from a back office. Not the friendly one who had been charmed by Jocelyn. A different one. A man with a severe expression. "Mr. and Mrs. Davies," the manager would say, his voice flat, not welcoming. "We cannot give you access to that account." "What do you mean?" Liam would shout, his voice echoing in the marble lobby. "It's our joint account. It's our money." "No, sir. The account is under a full investigative hold. It has been flagged by our Central Fraud Department for significant, irregular activity." "Fraudulent?" Jocelyn would laugh. A high, nervous sound. "That's absurd. My mother-in-law is just confused. She's been taking out large sums of cash. We're just here to clear it up." "Ma'am?" The manager would interrupt, his voice sharp, cutting through her performance. "The fraudulent activity in question, it appears to be yours, and his. You are both named as the suspects in the investigation. The bank is cooperating fully with the authorities. Now, I must ask you to leave." I imagine them. Standing in the middle of the bank, the other customers staring, exposed. They were not children helping their mother. They were suspects. They were trapped. I returned home at exactly 4 p.m. I had been at the library, but I had not been reading. I had been in a bright, clean office overlooking the Willamette River, sitting across from a sharp, kind woman who specialized in elder financial abuse. She had validated everything. The rage I felt was not just justified, it was legal. I put my key in the lock. The click was loud in the unnatural stillness of the house. They had kept the lights off, preferring to wait in the afternoon gloom. I opened the door. They were there, not on the sofa, not in the kitchen. They were standing in the hallway, as if to block my path. They looked feral, like animals trapped in a cage they did not understand. Their faces pale and their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fury. Jocelyn lunged first, her voice a raw shriek that echoed in the small space. "Where is it? Where is the money? What did you do with our money?" Liam stepped in front of me, physically blocking me from moving further. He was trying to be intimidating, puffing out his chest. "Mum, the game is over," he sneered. "Stop this stupid act. We have bills to pay. You are going to call that bank, and you are going to fix this. Right now." I looked at my son, this stranger who was threatening me in my own home, and I felt nothing. The fear was gone. The love had been hollowed out. All that was left was the cold, hard certainty of the archivist. I calmly placed my handbag on the small entryway table. "First," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the dim, heavy air. "There is no our money. There is only my money. And second, there is absolutely nothing to fix." I met Liam's gaze. "I have updated my bank account." I shifted my eyes to Jocelyn. "I have a new card. My pension and my social security are now deposited into an account that I, and only I, will ever control." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. Liam looked as though I had punched him in the stomach. He physically recoiled, his face turning a sickly shade of grey. Jocelyn's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The mask of the successful blogger, the perfect wife, shattered in a last, desperate maneuver. Jocelyn tried to cry. Her face crumpled, but it was a dry, theatrical performance. "Ilara," she choked out, her voice trembling with false emotion. How could you do this to us? We depend on you. After everything we have done, we are family. Family." I repeated the word. It tasted like ash. "Family does not steal. Jocelyn, family does not forge their mother's name on a $60,000 auto loan. Family does not secretly double a life insurance policy and then sit back and wait for them to die." They froze. The words hit them, and they had no defense. They were completely, utterly exposed. I walked past them. Liam was so stunned he did not move to stop me. I walked into Marcus's study, my study. On the desk, near the printer, were the 3 sheets of paper I had printed at the lawyer's office. I picked them up. I walked back to the hallway where they stood. 2 pathetic, greedy statues. I held out the first sheet. "This is a formal 30-day eviction notice," I said, my voice as flat as the paper. "You have 30 days to remove yourselves, and all your belongings, from my home." Jocelyn just stared at it, her hand not moving to take it. I held out the second sheet. "This is a copy of the official fraud affidavit I filed with the bank this afternoon. It concerns the SUV. The bank's fraud department and the police will be in contact with you shortly." Liam's eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw genuine, abject terror. "And this," I said, holding up the final piece of paper, "is an itemized bill. It is for the $84,000 you have stolen, withdrawn, and spent in the last 9 months. My lawyer will be in contact with you to discuss a repayment plan. She is very thorough." I did not wait for them to take the papers. I let all 3 of them flutter to the floor at their feet. I turned my back on them. "Now," I said, walking away. Get out of my husband's study. Thank you all so much for listening to my story. Please let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from so we can connect and share our thoughts. And please subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.